Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this video I'm going to be making this cupcake shaker card. Now this is the second video in a 4-part series on making shaker cards with your Cricut machine. Part 1 was released a couple of days ago and we made this basic shaker card where we just cut a square out of our paper to make that shaker effect. In this video, for part 2, we're taking things up a notch, and instead of a square, we're cutting out a fun shape, which we're going to cut with our Cricut machine. Now, I've done a cupcake for this card, but you can use any shape you want, any picture, and I'm going to show you how to do it in Design Space, so how you can cut whatever picture you want out of your card to create a shaker effect. Now if you're wondering what part 3 and 4 are, keep watching all the way to the end and I'll give you a sneaky preview. But for now, let's head on over to Design Space and start working on our shaker card. Before we can cut our shapes with our Cricut machine, we need to do a few little things in Design Space so that we can format the images to exactly how we need them to make our shaker cards. So I've already chosen my images here and I've done 2 different ones so that I can show you the 2 different ways to turn images into shaker cards. The cupcake's a bit different because it doesn't have a border around the edge. So the sunflower, it had those nice thick border lines, but this one doesn't have anything, it's just the colours. So I couldn't cut it as is because I'd have nothing to stick my foam pads to. So if you've got an image like this that doesn't have a border, you'll need to put it onto another shape to cut it out of your card. So I'm going to go into shapes and choose a square. If I move it over here, again my card will be 6 by 6 inches, but I'm going to leave a little bit of border around the edge of this square. So I'm going to go for 5 by 5 inches for the size. I'm going to make this white just so it's a little bit easier to see what we're doing, and then resize the cupcake and move it over to the white. Now the reason it's hidden behind is because in the layers panel it's underneath the square, so I can just click and drag to put it up to the top. I'm going to zoom in so this is a little bit easier to see. Alright, so now I've got the cupcake, I can play about with the size to decide where I want it to go, and then when I'm happy I'm going to choose the cupcake layer, press Ctrl on my keyboard and choose the square, and then go into the Align tool and press Center. And that's put that cupcake slap bang exactly in the middle of the square, so it's just going to look a little bit more balanced. Alright, so let's have a look at how this cupcake is made. It's got 3 layers. The bottom one is just the complete outside of the cupcake all in one colour. It's then got this, which is pink, and it's got the icing on top and the bottom cupcake bit as well. And then finally there is this green bit to sit on to be the cupcake wrapper. So it all joins together to make this. Now you'll notice this bottom layer does kind of give the illusion that it's making an outline. But it is still quite thin and narrow. If I was just to slice this layer out of my square, it would mean that the hole in the square is this whole size, and all I want to cut out is the top icing bit because that's where I want my shaker part to go. So I'm going to need to be a little bit sneaky with how I do this. So here's my cupcake wrapper, and I need to cut this green bit out of the pink bit, so that when I cut the pink bit out of the square, it's not going to include the bit that is the cupcake. That's a little bit confusing, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. So I'm going to choose the green layer and the pink layer and press the slice key. If I now hide the slice results, you can see I'm left with just the icing and then these little bits underneath. I don't want the bits underneath, so if I click the layer and then press contour and zoom out, I can click into all of those little bits at the bottom to hide them. So now I've just got the pink icing bit of the cupcake, and that's the bit that I want to cut out of my square. So now I can have this layer selected, press Ctrl on my keyboard and choose the square, and then press slice again. If I hide those first two slice results, you can see now I've got my square and it's going to cut out that middle bit. It might actually be easier to see if I change the colour of the square. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to cut that from one piece of paper, but I still want to cut the cupcake holder bit as well, because I'm going to stick that on the card. It's just not actually going to be part of the shaker itself. So now my cupcake is ready for me to send to my Cricut and cut. We're going to start by assembling the cupcake card. So I've cut out the pieces and I've used this Let's Celebrate paper pack from Love to Craft. So I've got the square shape that we made in Design Space and the little cupcake wrapper at the bottom. And then I've got a 6x6 inch ready-made card blank, and then I've cut a piece of coordinating paper to fit on top of there. Then my shaker card is going to go on top, in the middle, like that. So first I need to attach this bit to the front of my card. So I've got some double-sided tape here. I'm just going to go down the edges and get that stuck. Alright, so let's put that on here. There we go. I'm just going to open it up and make sure that's all nice and neat, which it is, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to put that to one side and also put to one side the little cupcake wrapper and bring in this square piece. We need to cut some acetate so that it's going to cover all of the cutouts on the back of this card. I have some acetate here. It's kind of hard to see because it's obviously see-through. And I'm just going to roughly cut that just with a pair of scissors so that it is going to cover the whole bit of the hole. And if it goes a little bit extra over, that doesn't matter. Now I find it's easier to use glue to apply the acetate because you can make sure that you stick it all the way around. So I'm just going to go around the edge of the icing on the cupcake, and this is the back of the bit of paper, remember, and just add some glue so that there's no gaps in it. And once that's done, I'm also going to put a bit along the corners of where my acetate's going to go, just so it sticks a little bit easier. When you've got the glue on, bring your acetate back and just stick it over and push that glue down, so you're making sure there's no gaps anywhere in the glue, because if there are gaps then all your little sequins might come out, which we don't want. I've actually put a little bit too much there, so I'm just going to wipe that away with my finger. Whilst that dries, we can add the foam tape. Now I've got really thick foam tape, and that worked well in my previous video for the square shaker I did, but for this one, as it's a bit more complex, I'm going to need to be a little bit more clever. So when you're doing complex shapes like this cupcake, we want to put the foam tape around the edge of the shape. I'm not going to do a square of tape around it because then all of your sequins and things can go into these gaps where there's no window. So you run the risk of people not being able to see all your nice pretty pieces, which kind of defeats the object of making the shaker card. So instead I'm going to cut my foam tape so it's thinner, and then cut it into slightly smaller pieces, and then just start building up a shape around the edge of the cupcake icing. So you can see how I'm kind of doing it. So it's not perfectly around the edge, but we're making this shape. And really important is all of your bits of foam tape must touch. So they must be pushed right up against each other so that there's no gap, because if there is a gap, then all of your little sparkly bits will be able to fall through that gap and come out of your card, which we don't want to happen. So Just make sure they're all nicely touching. I'm just going to keep working around the edge of the window and make sure everything is nice and touching. So again, it's not perfectly following the curves of the icing, but it's close enough that you're not going to have any great big gaps that your sequins and things can fall into, so that no one can see them. So I'm getting there with this one, and I'm pushing it all in so each of these bits of foam tape are touching each other. And then I've got just a little bit left here, and then one gap. That one might be a bit tricky to fill in, but I'll give it a go. There we go. So that is touching on both sides. Alright, so now we've got this, we need to add some tape around the edge of the rest of the square so that when we stick it on the card, it's going to be stuck all nicely around the edges as well. Now this one, you don't need to make it touch because your sequins and things aren't going to be along this edge. This is just so that the rest of the bits of the paper aren't going to sag or come off and look a little bit messy. So you don't need tape all the way along, but you can if you want to, although be careful because it can make your card a little bit heavy. So I'm just putting a few pieces along these edges, and I'm going to do the same thing along the top. Make sure your tape doesn't go outside the edge of the square, otherwise you'll be able to see it when you turn it over, which we don't want. We want it all nicely hidden. So there we go, that is all my tape ready. So now we're ready to add all the sparkly bits into the middle. And you can add them straight to your acetate and then try and stick your card on like that, but you're never going to get it straight and it'll probably end up looking messy. So an easier way to do it is just to kind of line it up roughly where it's going to go, so you get a good idea of where you're going to need the glittery bits, and then just put them onto your base card in the middle. I am going to use some of this confetti. I have a feeling it's going to go everywhere, but let's see. Yeah, it's all coming out. Oh dear, this is going to cause a right up mess. So I want some of the smaller bits in the bottom. So I'm just going to put this into the middle of my card. Some of these sparkly bits as well. This is going to take me forever to clean up. Why did I think this was a good idea? If you don't have confetti, you can use sequins or glitter or little tiny beads or embellishments, maybe even buttons. You can use glitter, but bear in mind that does get a bit staticky and it can stick to your acetate, so it's not always the best choice, but you certainly can use a bit of it. So I'm just going to move this into where I think it will go, and then just bring that over. I think I've actually got a bit too much on there. It's not really going to shake very well. So I'll take some of it off. I've got quite a lot of foam tape on here, so this might just take me a minute. There we are. Okay, so now this is all sticky. I can bring my card back in, and I'm just going to line it up. Okay, I think that's straight. And then when you're happy with the positioning, just push down all that foam tape. So we want to make sure it's all really stuck all the way around where we put it. And now give it a little shake, and you can see it moving. So I mean, I've put a little bit too much confetti in there. It's not shaking very well, but a few bits are. And you'll probably find after a while, if you just give it a nice hard shake, then things will start to move a little bit better. In my case, I definitely have put too much in there, which is why it's not having much of a shaky effect. So what I've actually just done is I peeled this layer off again with the foam pads and just took out some of the confetti because I just put too much in there and it wasn't moving. But now it is shaking a lot better, so I'm a lot happier with it. Okay, so we're nearly done, but we need to attach the bottom of the cupcake here. You can either do it just with glue, or you can use 3D foam pads to give it a bit of dimension. So I'm going to do that. I've cut some foam pads really small because there's not an awful lot of gap between the cutouts in this little cupcake wrapper, as you can see. So I'm just going to add some of these to the back in a couple of places. You don't need too many, as it's only a little bit of paper. Just enough that it's going to stick nicely. There we go. I think I will just put a couple more on. Actually, maybe just one more. This bit's nice and small. You stick that there. And then I'm going to peel off the backing. And this time it's different foam pads, and these ones are not quite so forgiving. Alright, so there we are, and then I'm just going to stick this to the bottom of the cupcake to add the wrapper. And there we are, that is very nearly finished. I'm just going to add a couple of stickers for a little bit of extra fun. So I think I will put on party time. Just put that in the top, like that one, and then maybe another one. As it's a cupcake, let's go for this one which says eat cake. I'll just put that in the top there. And what I love about these Dovecraft things is that they all kind of match together, all the colours. So now our cupcake card is all finished and ready to write our message inside and send. Once you've mastered this technique of cutting images out with your Cricut machine and turning them into a shaker, it gives you so many options for future cards. So for example, here's a Christmas card I made, and all of these pictures here are cut out using my Cricut machine, and this is actually a design that's in Cricut Access, so I didn't really need to do anything other than cut it out of the red card. And then I put my foam around the edge and stuck it all together with loads of glitter and sequins to make a really nice Christmas card. Now, as I said at the beginning, this was part 2 of a 4-part series of videos in making shaker cards. So part 1 was the basic shaker card, part 2 is our cupcake, and coming up in a couple of days' time it'll be part 3 where I'm going to make this sunflower card. Now this is really fun because all of the petals of the sunflower are completely separate from another, which has let me put different colours of beads and sequins in the petals to make a really fun and unusual effect. On this card we're actually going to be cutting the acetate with the Cricut machine because it needs to be cut into the shape of the sunflower. So if you've never ventured beyond cutting card and maybe a little bit of vinyl with your Cricut machine, keep watching in a couple of days' time to find out how to cut acetate. And then a couple of days after that we're going to move on to part 4, which is making this rainbow card. It's kind of similar to the sunflower, but it's a little bit more complex because we're using 4 different colours of card in the rainbow to create the fun effect. So if you don't want to miss parts 3 and 4, then subscribe to my channel using the button below and click the little bell and you'll get a notification when these 2 videos go live. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed watching this cupcake tutorial, then please give the video a thumbs up using the button below, and again just hit that subscribe button. It would really mean a lot to me to have you as a subscriber. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.